verse 20. Excellent. Thank you. Have you ever looked to the future of a particular situation with little hope for a good outcome? Specifically, maybe like a relationship that's just not on good terms. And you just there's no way this is going to play out good. There's no way that it can go back to the way that it was. There's no way that it can actually be good again. I've experienced that several times with friends, even some family. I imagine some of you have experienced that as well. But no one, I imagine, at least certainly not many, would ever be in the position that Isaac was in. Imagine Isaac, who's one of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Imagine how Isaac must have felt at the end of his life, trying to think about what will happen after he is gone. If you're familiar at all with the story of Isaac, you know that Isaac is he's a supporting character. He's never the main character of a story. Abraham, lots of stories about Abraham. He's the main character. Jacob, Isaac's son, lots of stories about him. He's the main character. Isaac is the supporting character. In fact, he's silent throughout most of the chapters and verses about him. And a lot of those chapters and verses deal with a lot of pain and suffering and grief. But at the end of his life, I can only imagine what he must have felt like. What is the future going to look like for me? God has promised my father a lot of descendants, a lot of land. I'm the only one left. And we only own a grave in the land that God has promised us. More than that, Jacob and Esau, Isaac's sons, twin boys. Man, talk about dysfunction. Talk about trauma. Talk about family dysfunction and trauma. Jerry Springer show would have nothing on Isaac, Jacob, and Esau. From the time that Isaac's wife conceived Jacob and Esau, there was a prophecy about them. Two nations in her womb, they were going to be at war with each other. The older would serve the younger. And that's kind of the way it played out in Isaac's life. When Jacob and Esau were born, Jacob came out second. Esau came out first. Jacob came out second. He was literally gripping the heel of Esau. So they named him Jacob, one who grabs at the heel, or one who trips people up. You know, like they're walking and you grab a heel to trip them up. A deceiver. And Jacob lived up to his name. Esau says so himself, twice being deceived by his brother. First, to take his birthright, and second, to take his blessing from Isaac. So Jacob, even though he was the second born, was going to be the one who's going to have that promise that God had made first to Abraham and then to Isaac. He was going to be the bearer of the covenant to move forward. All of the blessing was really going to come upon him. And he totally deceived his brother, deceived his father. He later deceives his father-in-law. Jacob was messed up. And we're going to talk about him a little bit more next week. But today, just imagine how Isaac must have felt. Hebrews 11:20, as Rita just read for us, it says, by faith Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau in regard to their future. By faith. At the beginning of the chapter, you may remember, faith is confidence. Faith is assurance of good things to come that you can't see yet, that God is going to work out. And why did Isaac have such confidence? Why did he have such assurance that God was going to work good things out, not just for one of his sons, but for both of them, for Jacob and Esau with regards to their future? That's the question I want to talk about this morning. And I think the answer comes only through reflection and meditation. We're going to reflect on Isaac's story briefly. Again, there's really not a lot of stories, and he's not the main character in any of them. But I want you to remember, to be able to understand the insight of why Isaac had such confidence, faith about the future of Jacob and Esau. I want you to remember that the Old Testament, what we call the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, it's Jewish meditation literature. It's very different literature than what we read today, than what gets written in 21st century America. It's very different. So you have to approach it differently. And to understand the meaning in it, you have to know that every detail matters. There's not a detail in the Hebrew Bible, in this meditation literature, that is of no consequence. Each little detail is in there for a reason. And I want you to know that on the front end, because we're going to meditate on a particular detail that gets very often overlooked and yet has a lot of meaning. It comes first about halfway through Isaac's story. He's about 40 years old, and his father has sent his servant off to find a wife for Isaac. We talked about this briefly last week. And the detail says, at the very end of chapter 24 of Genesis, it says, "Now Isaac had come from Beer Laharoi, for he was living in the Negev." Now, again, I read my Bible sometimes, come across a detail like this, and I just kind of blow right through it. Right? You read about things that happened in certain places. You don't know why it's in there. You may not even give it a second thought. And yet this specific place carries a lot of weight. Why does the text point out that Isaac had been visiting this place of Beer Laharoi? Well, this place gets named by Isaac's father's concubine, Hagar. It comes in Genesis 16. In Genesis 16, Abraham and Isaac had come up with this plan to conceive a child through Sarah's slave, Hagar, that she had gotten in Egypt. And Abraham goes along with the plan. Hagar gets pregnant. And very quickly, there is a lot of dysfunction between Sarah and Hagar. Of course, right? All the women in here just nod, right? So Hagar is proud that she's pregnant when Sarah has been unable to get pregnant for decades. Sarah now despises Hagar for getting pregnant and taking the child of Abraham and really having that honor. And she begins to mistreat Hagar, her slave. And so much so that Hagar runs away. She runs off into the wilderness. And she is ready to die. She's crying out to the Lord about the injustice. She is ready to die. And then the Lord shows her this well. It's water. It's an oasis in a wasteland. And the Lord says, "Hey, don't be afraid. I want you to go back to Abraham and go back to your master Sarah, and I want you to live with them. I am going to bless your son. In fact, he is going to become the father of nations as well. 12 sons he'll have. He's going to be a wild donkey of a man." I mean, it's kind of a lot of blessing that the Lord is giving to Hagar and to her son, who will be called Ishmael. And Hagar says this. Hagar gives the Lord a name. Hagar gave this name to the Lord who spoke to her. "You are the God who sees me." For she said, "I have now seen the one who sees me." That is why the well and the surrounding area is called Beer Laharoi. It's an interesting story. It's an interesting name that the Lord has given. And this place gets named for this event, this blessing, that the Lord does see Hagar, an Egyptian slave of Abraham. And as Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob's story plays out and the story of their children, it's interesting how the roles reverse. And Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob's sons, they become the slaves of Egypt. There's a lot to meditate on this, and I hate to sidestep all of it, but I want to ask the question, why do we see Isaac visiting this specific place where God blessed Hagar, where Hagar named the Lord, the God who sees? Why was Isaac there? If we were to reflect on this together, I'm sure we could come up with many ideas. I want to share just a couple of them with you. One is to think about all of the trauma that Isaac has experienced up until this point. First of all, Hagar does go back and she lives with Abraham and Sarah. And yet, in time, Ishmael comes along, later Isaac comes along, and it's not fitting for them to continue living together. Sarah wants Hagar and Ishmael gone. And the Lord consents to that, and he instructs Abraham to send Hagar and Ishmael away. It's a painful story. He sends them out into the wilderness with nothing but basically a bottle of water. Imagine, though, the trauma of being young little Isaac. You know, most young boys, especially brothers, will look up to their older brother. If we were to put ourselves in Isaac's position and trying to understand this, it's hard to understand it in old age. It's hard to understand when you've read this story many times. What's going on here? But as little Isaac, I don't know how old he was, 5, 6, 7, 10, I don't know. Watching your older brother go off, watching the feud between your mothers, you know, that live in the camp, and how that just ripples all throughout, and not just ripples throughout the camp, but ripples throughout the generations. I mean, it had to have a massive impact on him. I wonder if maybe Isaac went to Beer La Haroi specifically to see if the Lord was true to his word and would bless Hagar and Ishmael. Kind of a trust but verify thing. I want to see, are you the kind of God who really does follow through? Because though my father has been blessed, now we don't own really any land except a grave. More than that, Abraham has tried to sacrifice Isaac on an altar. A story that we still wrestle with internally. Man, what could that have been like for Abraham? That's the emphasis. But what was that like for Isaac? I'm sure there were no camping trips with Dad after that. You know, it's just, Isaac, you want to go for a camping trip? No, thank you. I'm making light of it, but really think about it. I mean, think about how Isaac must have felt. One, he's seen his brother sent off, and then now he's experienced nearly being sacrificed. It had to have been a lifetime of just trying to understand what's going on. And then Isaac's own mother passes, and they still don't own any more land except her grave. Why did he visit there? Maybe it was to see if God had blessed Ishmael. Maybe he was trying to connect with him again relationally. Or maybe Isaac, too, after all of the trauma that he had experienced, was feeling very similar to how Hagar was when she first met God in this place. She's an Egyptian slave who's mistreated, out alone and about to die. And she finds out that the God of heaven and earth, the God who created all things, sees even her and blesses her and gives her hope. I wonder if Isaac too was saying, God, do you see me too? Do you see me? This is a primary reason that I believe that Isaac was visiting the place that Hagar names I have been seen by the God who sees. And yet this isn't the last mention of this specific place, Beer Lahai. It comes in the very next chapter, and that's why I think it's no coincidence. It's mentioned 3 times at a very short period of time, and all of it has to do with trauma and pain and suffering and wondering about the future and a lot of uncertainty about the future. Hagar's uncertainty, Isaac's uncertainty. The final mention is actually a really beautiful thing. It comes after Abraham's death. Abraham, an old man, full of years, is gathered to his people. That's how Genesis 25 says it. And then it says, then his sons, Abraham's sons, Isaac and Ishmael, buried him in the cave of Machpelah near Mamre, in the field of Ephron, son of Zohar the Hittite, the field Abraham had bought from the Hittites. Each of these stories is important. The negotiating for property between Abraham and the Hittites is very important. It's the first acquisition of land. It becomes a grave. The sending off of Hagar and Ishmael, it seems like the final time that we will see their story played out. And yet here we see that God has reunited Isaac and Ishmael, coming together side by side to lay their father to rest. Now put yourself in Ishmael's shoes. The only way that I can really see this happening after you have been cut off from the family and cut off from the blessing and sent out into the wilderness with a bottle of water is if maybe Isaac really had gone to Beer Lahai to find Ishmael specifically, to tell him, I love you, I care about you, I want you in my life. Sure, I'm speculating a little bit here, and yet in the next verse we see that after Abraham's death, God blesses his son Isaac, who then moves to live near Beer Lahai. Now, I've told you before, and I'm actually hoping that you all will become this as well. I'm kind of a Bible nerd. I love the Bible. The Lord speaks to me through the Bible. I see him. I understand his character more. And sometimes I have to read the words, and other times I have to flip to the very end, the maps, right? You still have maps in your Bible? Little side note here that just kind of only enhances the story in my mind. What you're looking at is an aerial view of what the land of Canaan down into Egypt below and out towards Babylon to the right. Right here is the land of Canaan, the land that eventually Abraham and Isaac and Jacob's sons and their family will inherit. Down here is the desert of Paran. Genesis 21, it says this is where Ishmael decides to make his home. And in the same vicinity is Beer Lahai, Genesis 25:11, where Isaac makes his home. To me, it speaks volumes that even after all of the trauma, even after all of the concern about the future, Isaac chooses to move next door to his brother Ishmael. Isn't that fascinating? So we come back to Hebrews chapter 11, and it says, by faith Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau in regard to their future. Jacob and Esau, who are enemies. Esau has sworn that after his father Isaac dies, he is going to kill Jacob. Jacob flees, runs away. At the end of Isaac's life, his family is totally ripping apart. Why did he have faith with regard to the future of Jacob and Esau? I think it has everything to do with how the Lord worked through Ishmael, how the Lord worked through Isaac to reunite them. It's very sad if you're familiar with the history of humanity since the time of Isaac and Ishmael. Their descendants remained at war with each other for centuries, thousands of years, maybe even to today, if you were to track where Ishmael's descendants wound up. It's so sad. And yet there was hope for Isaac and Ishmael both. The Lord blessed both Isaac and Ishmael and even reunited them. And I think it's this experience that allows Isaac to have faith that the Lord was going to bless both Jacob and Esau, and perhaps even reunite them. See, I believe he was able to have faith with regard to their future, his sons who could have destroyed each other. I believe he had faith because he learned a lesson at a young age that only in time and only through experience he came to know as truth. That the Lord really does provide. That even when we don't experience the blessing the way we would like to experience the blessing, that even when there is still trauma between family, between people that we love, and disagreement that's sharp and bitter and resentment and grudges, that the Lord is able to reunite. He's able to bring things together that no one could have brought together. But that even if he didn't bring the blessing, and that even if he didn't bring a reuniting between Jacob and Esau, Isaac trusted that the Lord would provide what was needed to ultimately bring about the promise for all of their family and for all of the families on the face of the earth, including your family. See, God is the master of bringing good out of bad and joy out of suffering. And if you have ever looked to the future with little hope of a good outcome, maybe in your family, maybe in your work, maybe in a lot of different areas, Isaac serves, even though his stories are not extensive, Isaac serves as a model for us in choosing to have faith that the Lord will provide what is needed. And my strong encouragement to you is to reflect on that. Whenever you find yourself getting discouraged, whenever you find yourself losing hope, remember that the Lord provides. The Lord provides. Tim Keller says God is so committed to your ultimate joy that he was willing to plunge into the greatest depths of suffering himself for you. It's beautiful whenever you think about the suffering of Jesus on the cross, that it was joy for him, knowing that he was going to bring people together. He was going to bring together all of the families of the earth. He was going to bring together Jews and Greeks alike. This is how far he was willing to go for your ultimate joy. Because one day we will experience ultimate joy, true, perfect joy, the pleasure of the Lord. But there was only one way to get there, and it was through Jesus, him living the life that we should have lived and dying the death that we deserve to die. And though Isaac was a long way off from seeing this day coming, he had faith that the Lord would provide. In the same way that Isaac visited this place of Beer Lahai, God, do you see me? God did see him, and he sent Rebekah. She was already on her way, and she comes to Isaac, and they experience peace. They experience comfort, a little bit of what we will fully experience one day. Jesus saw his bride in the same way that Isaac did, a long way off, and he came to meet her, humbling himself through death on a cross. If you haven't put your trust in Jesus yet and understood that there is no hope for you of rescue from the wrath of God that is coming, there's no hope for you without Jesus. Today, I just want to encourage you to put your trust in him. You can come talk with me. We can talk about the freedom and the joy that comes through putting your trust in Jesus, being baptized and washed clean of your sin, receiving the gift of his Spirit in you, and becoming like Isaac, having faith that the Lord will provide for you now until the very end, that the Lord will start a good work in you that will never stop until the very end. He is with you always. If you haven't, please come and talk with me about that. I would absolutely love that. If you have already done that, you have a responsibility. You have a new lens of looking at the world. We talk about our cultural values today, and this week is to rest in God. And I encourage you to do that, to rest in what the Lord is doing and how the Lord will provide for each of you. But also, I want to encourage you to practice another cultural value. It's to radiate joy. Even in your suffering, to radiate joy. It's not a manufactured thing. It's not an act you're putting on. It's truly to say, because of this right here, and because knowing that the Lord will provide, that he is willing himself to come down and take on flesh and be stripped naked and be nailed to a cross and to die for me. Because of this, how then should I live? And so I ask you to think about this question. When others encounter me, do they see a victory mindset or a victim mindset? When you think about the problems of your life, when you think about the pain of your life, when you think about the suffering that you're going through, when you think about your grief, it's not easy. You yourself do not have the power to do it. It is only through the Spirit of Jesus coming into you who allows you to live with a victory mindset. Christians, what do people see? Do they see you living in fear because of what's going on in the world right now? Or do they see someone who's confident, who has assurance that the Lord will provide? Some of you have experienced things in life that no one should ever experience. To an extent, we all have, but some of you have experienced dark things. You have been a victim. And yet, you don't have to live as a victim. To think and to act like a victim will have power over you, and it will try to control you, and it will affect every area of your life. You can trust the Lord with it. You can turn it over to him knowing that there is victory in him. What do people see? What do your children see? These are the things I want to encourage you to think about. I wrestle with it myself. And there are times when I try to muster up the strength to have a victory mindset. And yet, I don't have the strength for it. We must rely on the strength that the Lord provides. This is my encouragement to all of you. To not only think about it now, but to think about it in the days and weeks and months to come. And allow this to shape your life. Allow this to shape your family's life. Allow this to shape your marriage. Don't be a victim anymore. Yes, you will experience suffering and pain and grief, but we do not grieve in vain, because one day Jesus will fulfill what he started, and he will come to get his bride and lead her to a new heavens and a new earth. And I long for that day. And I would like to pray for that right now. Let's pray. Father, come quickly. Send Jesus soon. Father, there are parts of our lives that I really love, and I really want it to keep going, and I'm not ready. But Father, that's only in ignorance, I know. True perfect peace and joy is waiting for us. So, Father, I pray that we will have faith like Isaac with regard to the future, a future that sometimes can seem rather bleak. Father, we put all of our trust in you, and it's through Jesus'